Hello, and welcome to the Publish Club podcast. I am your host, Chris Kendall, founder of the Publish Club and managing editor of Surrendered Press. Thank you for joining us today as we explore a new book written by an up-and-coming author that is probably new to you, but something you might want to put on your to-be-read list. If you're a new or aspiring author and would like to become a member of the Publish Club, please visit thepublishclub.com for author services that can help remove some of the non-writing tasks from your plate so you can focus on getting your book finished. And if you're a reader, I hope that you'll keep this book in mind as something that might be interesting for you to check out. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, my guest is Rachel Blume. She is working on her book right now. So, Rachel, hello. Tell us about your book and what you're doing with it.
Yeah, so I write literary fiction. Literary fiction is, I think, something that kind of can confuse people. It's kind of its own genre, if you will. It's where you take genre-specific tropes like romance, or you take like a historical fiction or horror, and then you take whatever that trope is in your literary fiction, and then you subvert whatever the trope is. You're playing around with other things that are coming from genre fiction, and turning it into something new, using it to talk about something. So it can come across in many forms. I think like popular books that are literary fiction would be like 100 Years of Solitude, David Mitchell's Cloud Atlas. Like those are like literary fiction books. They take a lot of genre things and then subvert them and use them to talk about something. So that's what I write. And this book that I have written, it's done. It's finished. I'm just waiting for someone to pick it up. I'm going to a couple of conferences coming up in the spring and in the summer to try and get the book sold to an agent so that it can be published, traditionally published. I'm not going to self-publish this. That's not a dig on anyone, but in my field, as more of like a literary and academic writer, it will boost my career to have it traditionally published because that's what they're looking for in my field. The book's title is Blackwater Wolf. It's the story of a rural Kentucky town, if you will, in the late 80s, early 90s. And it follows the friendship that ends up turning into a relationship between these two teenage girls, one who's run away from home from a very like conservative family, and the other who is in town in the small town of Blackwater County, who is not out to her parents. And so as this relationship kind of goes on, there's under the surface, there's lurking the disappearance of a couple of people from that area. Runaways are not uncommon in that area, especially in that time period. I actually know somebody who's here with me and actually comes from that area and was a runaway at the age of 16 due to those exact reasons. And so we actually were able to connect over this part of the book, but under there, as this relationship is forming and growing and happening, there's teenagers and a couple of the community that have gone missing. And nobody really is able to determine where they've gone, only that these two of them are teenage girls. And the idea is that maybe they've run away, which isn't uncommon. That's not what has happened to them. As the book progresses and the two women get older, one of them is named, her nickname is Pup, and the other one is Jackie, nicknamed Jack by Pup. As they get older, Jack doesn't want to stay in this small county. She wants to go to college in California. And she ends up going for like a semester, comes back, and realizes just how small this town is, and she doesn't really want to stay there. Whereas Pup is kind of found a way of life there, has enjoyed that, has now sort of like built a community around herself. Also still not out, but enjoying that aspect of life. Unfortunately, what ends up happening is they kind of separate, they drift apart. One person wants more of life, and the other one really wants to stay slow and stay in Kentucky. When Jack and Pup make that decision to split apart. Um, the book kind of takes a break. It's a segue, and we pick up 15 years later. And what's happened is Jack's come back to deal with her parents' estate. Her last living parent has passed away, her mom. And so now she's come back to deal with this tobacco farm and what exactly she's going to do with it. Is she going to sell it? Is she going to stay there? What is she going to do with this? And then she's kind of made this decision. She's just going to sell it off. She didn't really want to see Pup when she came back. Right at the edge of that property line, right where it goes up into the mountains, a 9-year-old boy has suddenly shown up with no family. And she's not really sure what to do about that. Jack has now a teen daughter and a tween son, and she feels really disconnected from them. She's not really sure like what motherhood means to her right now. She feels like maybe she's a bad mom. She's married to her husband, and they have like a whole family built, and they're planning to go back to California. And she kind of sees this 9-year-old boy, Jody, as a way to try her hand again at being a mom. The only problem is that this 9-year-old is really struggling with what Jackie views as being like a good mom and what good motherhood is for her. And she's kind of a bit smothering and trying to do this over again. And he runs away and they can't find him. And with winter approaching, they've made the decision now that they've got to find him. It can get really cold out there. And so with such a struggle to locate him, she makes the decision she's going to have to contact the only person that she thinks is the best at living back there in that backcountry bush culture. And that's unfortunately, well, I won't say unfortunately, because I don't think that's quite true, but Jack and Pop end up kind of coming back together and kind of trying to figure out what it was that happened that broke them apart, and they sort of rekindle something there. I think the hard part for them is that, you know, Pup wants to go back to exactly the way things were, which is not possible. And Jack doesn't really want to go back to the way things were. Jack is kind of understanding that they broke apart for a reason, that it's not going to work. And there's a sense of selfishness, I think, there too, which is important. Selfishness isn't necessarily bad. Sometimes it's your inner self talking to you, telling you what your needs are. There's a bit of jealousy, I think, on Jack's part, watching Pup and Jody, the boy, kind of be able to have a connection because they've lived very similar lives. There is a moment where to run away again, and the hard part is that Jody's explained to Jack there's a monster in the shadow of this mountain, and it's very real. And Jack's not really sure what to make of that. She seems to think it's kind of made up, that he's a child. You know, it's not real. It's this child's imagination. It could be anything, a bear. But Pup has been out there a lot longer and does know that there is something out there, and she has felt it too. She's discovered from Jody where this thing might be living. And when they get out there, there is definitely a very human force out there. It's human. It's a person. But once that's taken out of the equation, Pup still understands, and so does Jody as well. And so does the human being that they have located out there, that there is a real monster out there, and it's real. So they get out there, and it's now Pup's turn to solve this, which is kind of a manifestation of a lot of internal things that have been going on. And I'll leave the ending for anybody who wants to read it, but kind of a lot of people discovering who they are. It's kind of a coming of age story, but towards the end, it's more of like a self-acceptance story.
Okay, wow. That's a lot of interesting things going on. Yeah, okay. So you said that this was part of your thesis. So what did you write it for?
So I'm a Master of Fine Arts student, and I'm also a Master of Arts for Literature student as well here at University of Alaska Fairbanks. I'm getting ready to enter my 3rd year this fall. And so this book is basically a culmination of my degree. So it will have to be defended in the spring of 25. So I think that makes it a little different than some books that are just written with the sole intention of being published.
Entertainment.
Yeah, even though this book is being written saying, yeah, no, I want to make money off of this for sure, it's also being written to prove my craft as a writer as well. I have to answer a lot of questions by a panel of faculty who have been doing this for 20 plus years, and they're going to ask me a lot of questions about justifying what I did.
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare. Okay, yeah. Wow. Well, good luck. That's going to be scary. Okay, so you mentioned at the beginning you wanted to kind of explain the difference between literary and genre fiction. And I guess I still don't really understand the difference because everything that you said sounds exactly like any book that I've ever, I mean, not the, for the most part, that could have been any book that I've read. So what are some of the things that make it different than just like a thriller with romantic undertones or something like that?
So when we talk romance, like specific, like classic romantic books, you'll end up with something like Pride and Prejudice, where like or let's think about like a classic romance novel like from Harlequin, if you will. Like you've got the protagonist who's usually a woman who ends up meeting the guy, and they go on some kind of adventure. Maybe they don't actually want to be together, or maybe everything looks great, whatever it is, there's always like the twist that happens. Maybe it's, well, he's really wealthy, but suddenly we've got this bad guy who's going to come in and try to take all the money. And right after that, there's always like this moment of peril where like the romantic love interest has been kidnapped by the bad guy, or she's suddenly stranded somewhere and doesn't know what to do. Like there's this moment of peril, and then there's the rescuing, whether that's through finances, or he realizes no, he really does love her and he jumps back in to save her, or maybe she even rescues the male love interest, like, oh my gosh, what an amazing heroine. And then at the end, there's like the wedding, if there wasn't already one, or this reunification of their love. And then a lot of the time at the very, very end, there's she's pregnant, right? That does not happen in this book. The romance is that they love each other, and that relationship is growing, and there is romance there, but there's no like peril. Like that structure doesn't quite exist. There's whole sections of that structure that are missing. And then in the end, when you have like this moment where someone needs to be rescued, the heroine is rescuing herself. And it's all very metaphorical too, because it's a lot of internal things that have become an external manifestation.
Yeah, I guess I never really put much thought into the differences before. So yeah, that'll be interesting to check out. Okay, so your plan is that next in spring of 2025 it gets defended, and then do you have to wait until after that to try to sell it, or can you sell it now if somebody shows up and wants it?
Yeah, I can sell it now. That's kind of what's really great is, so I completed this very early. I spent all of last year back and forth with editors, taking a look at it, building out different things. There are lots of different kinds of editors. So the first step I took was the developmental editor, to kind of look at how the story as a whole, like on the surface level, is looking. Are there holes in the plot? Is it not moving at a certain pace somewhere? Are there threads that are lost somewhere? And then once those issues were kind of settled a little bit more, I moved into, okay, well, let's talk about more detailed editing. We're not talking quite line edit, but we are looking at like above a little bit. And then I just started finishing up a lot of the like line edits and stuff. I'll finish a lot of that still through this next couple of months. If there's anything that was particularly egregious to like an editor and an agent when they saw it. But I am going to the Catch McVeigh Writers Conference. I was hoping to go to the Northward Symposium as well. And then I was accepted to the Orion Environmental Writers Workshop as well. So I'll be doing that in the summer. And I also have a Story Knife residency for 2 weeks in Homer in August. So all of that's going to kind of be ways for me to get into discussions with editors and agents at various like publishing companies so that they'll pick it up and they'll say, yeah, no, this is sellable, and I'm going to be your agent for this particular book so that we can sell that to the masses or to wherever we choose to sell that to. I've spoken to a few agents and editors before who were interested in the work, but at that time the work was not completed. The work was not finished, but they did read through like the first, I want to say 2 to 3 chapters of the book as it was, and they were very interested in it once it was complete. I've now taken a year since then, and I'm hoping to go back and see if I can pick up an agent.
Awesome. Well, that's exciting. Congratulations on getting to this point, and I hope it's an easy process, um, as you move forward. And so what happens if you get an agent, today and get a great publisher and a great contract and all that stuff, over the next few months or something like that. And then spring comes along and the thesis panel just like tears it apart. Does it matter, or does it only matter toward your degree, but not really as far as the book is concerned?
I don't think, I think I would be very surprised if they were going to absolutely tear it apart. I've worked very, very closely with a lot of the faculty that will be putting a lot of those questions in. I've taken a lot of high level courses in like environmental anthropology and environmental psychology, specifically in like hard to live in areas. Uh, so I'm pretty confident that the work will pass just fine. But thinking about the questions that they would ask me um, helped make the work, I think, a lot stronger. So some of the questions that I think are important to ask in this piece, the monster is disabled. And so one of the important questions I know that I will face is, well, how is this piece in how is this piece in conversation with disability studies and disability theory? Specifically, this monster is not a monster because he is disabled or it is disabled. Um, so the novel is not portraying disability as monstrous, which I think is really important as well. So like those are questions that I think by having them in my mind already, knowing that they will be asked, I can address them ahead of time. So basically, I don't think that I'll run into too much trouble with the defense of the novel, just because I've put so much work into it ahead of time. But if something happened and they really did tear it apart, um, I would probably really hope that I could reach out to my agents and say, hey, I want to fix these couple of things before it's released. Because my goal is to have enough of a platform so that when the book comes out, they'll know what it is and people will go and purchase it and pre-order it and stuff like that. Um, and that the book can come out right after the defense. So if I defend in March of 2025, my goal is that it would be released in May of 2025, which is roughly
Hmm.
1 year from now.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. Well, this is very interesting. Definitely different than, most of the authors that I usually talk to who have already published and their books out there and they're holding up a copy and they're, like, okay, go buy it today. So this is something that we can look forward to and be excited about. So say the title again and the name and how people are, hopefully going to be able to find it.
So this book would be titled Blackwater Wolf. It's going to probably be listed, like if you were to go into the store, it would be under new fiction. It would be under perhaps literary fiction, or depending on the marketing strategy that my agent and publishers took, it could also be found in thrillers section, just because of the nature of it, if they were concerned with how to sell it. But I think probably what's going to happen is you'll find it under new fiction on the table, or it'll be in literary fiction along
Literary.
the wall. Yeah, literary fiction
Okay.
along the wall.
Awesome. Well, good. Well, we will definitely be looking for that. Thank you so much, Rachel. It's been great having you on, and I learned something new, so that's always exciting. Um, all right, and so I would like to also thank all the listeners and viewers today for joining us. I hope you'll come back again next time when we learn about a different book from a new author that might end up at the top of your to be read list. And until then, keep reading.